Years ago, in my youth ministry days, I used to take, I've told this church family before, but I used to take a bunch of high school kids up to Duluth, Minnesota, and we do service projects for a week. And this one particular time, there was a house that we needed to work on, and we needed to take a bunch of ladders with us. And so the church that we were working with, one of the staff guys there, had a little trailer. Just a little. I mean, the ladders were kind of hanging pretty far out the back of it, but just a little thing that he could pull behind his minivan. But he said, can you hook this up to your church van and take it with you to your job so I don't have to, I got other places to drop materials off. Can you take it with you? Sure thing. And so, I'm getting materials and we're getting our lunches packed. We're doing all these things. And I had this one kid is like, hey, I can hook up the trailer for you. And I was like, do you know how? He's like, sure. And I said, okay. And so I let him hook up the trailer. And then I get in my van with my work crew, and we take off, and we got probably about a 20-minute drive or so to get to where we're going. And we're going down the highway, 55, 60 miles an hour, something like that. And all of a sudden, as I'm driving along, all of a sudden I hear this wham! And I look I thought somebody had rear-ended me. I didn't realize it. And I look in the rearview mirror, and the trailer is just bouncing all around like this and has hit the back door of the van multiple times. And so I get the van pulled over as soon as I can and go and look, and the trailer just come loose, just come off the trailer hitch, off the ball there. And so I asked this kid, I'm like, hey, did you hook up the trailer like yours? Like, did you do everything right? Because I was thinking maybe something was wrong with the hitch. He's like, no, I did everything right. And I said, walk me through what you did. And he's like, I hooked up the trailer. I had the thing that goes over the ball, just put it on there, and I hooked up the chains. And I'm like, whoa. Back up to that first step there. He's like, I hooked it up, and then I got the chains, and then I said, okay, how did you hook the trailer, how did you hook that hitch up over that ball? He's like, I just put it on top of it because it just fits right on top of it. It's like, this is the thing. And those of you who know about trailers know the key piece of this. You have to kind of lock that thing down so that it doesn't come up off the ball. Does that make sense? And he hadn't done that. And so we drove, the Southside Church in Rogers for several years had a giant dent in the back door of the van because this kid didn't know how to hook up a trailer. Thankfully, he had hooked up the chain, so we didn't just leave it in the highway. We dragged it along with us for a while. But I had this expectation. I thought, hey, do you know how to hook up a trailer? Yes, I do. I expected him to hook it up correctly, and he didn't. And that happens to us a lot, doesn't it? I mean, I know there's parents right now thinking about their kids. I expect them to do this, and this, and then they don't. And now I'm frustrated and upset. But you know what? Sometimes our kids have expectations of us parents too, and we don't quite match up with those. We have expectations of our friends. We have expectations of our coworkers. We have expectations that we bring into our marriages and our dating relationships. We have these different expectations. And we're going to talk about that today because of what we started talking about last week. This phrase that we use often, it's not you, it's me. And we recognized last week that a lot of times when we say that in a relationship, especially like in a friendship or a dating relationship, we usually use that phrase to kind of let somebody down easy. We don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want to be in this relationship anymore, but we don't want to hurt their feelings. So we tell them, it's not you, it's me. But what we started talking about last week is the fact that sometimes when there's problems, when there's conflict, there's anxiety, there's trouble in this connection, whether it's a friendship or a marriage or family dynamic, we need to take a step back sometimes and recognize, as much as I want to point out your faults, as much as I want to say this is what you're doing and this is why this relationship is not what it should be, I need to be willing to take a step back and go, hold on, what is it about me that could be different? What actions could I do differently? What is it that I am causing to happen in this relationship? How can I be a better me so that we can be a better we? What can I do personally just to make myself a better person so that we have a better connection with each other? And so last week we talked about sometimes when there's problems in a relationship, it's not you, it's my desire for control. And we talked about how some of us we really want things to go our way, and we have to have control. We have to have control over this, over every situation in our lives, including this relationship, and how hurtful that can be sometimes. So this morning, I want us to recognize, as we've already mentioned, that sometimes when there's conflict, when there's problems in a relationship, it may not be you, it may be me. Specifically, it's my expectations. It's my preconceived ideas of what this relationship is supposed to look like. It's the picture that I've created in my head of what this dynamic should be. And I've decided that I expect you to display certain character traits. There's certain ways that I expect you to talk to me, or certain ways that I expect you to treat me. And there's certain ways I expect you to handle conflicts. And there's certain ways I expect us to spend our time. And there's certain ways I expect you to react to my actions and my words. And it's not necessarily bad to have expectations. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have in my mind what I think this relationship could or should look like. But these expectations can end up causing a problem. And it can happen in any of my relationships. It can happen in our friendships. It can happen with parents with their kids. It can happen with kids with their parents. It can happen in a marriage. It can happen in a dating relationship, even with coworkers. We've built up in our minds, we've conjured up in our minds, this is what this connection should look like. And I have these expectations. And the problem is that I can hold so strongly to those that they can end up causing a problem between the two of us. And there's all sorts of reasons why I have these pictures in my mind of what this connection should look like. I mean, it could be because of my past experiences. It could be because of, the family that I grew up in. It could, what I saw modeled for me from my parents or from the family dynamic that I was in. It could be because of past dating relationships. It could be a former marriage, and this is what it looked like. There's even other friendships that I had. When I was friends with these people, this is what it was like, and I expect that to be the same way with all my friendships, or at least with this friendship group too. My past experiences can impact, both positively and negatively, what I expect from this current relationship. Sometimes it's my expectations come from comparison. I look at what other people have. I look at their marriage. I look at their friendship. I look at what they look like when they're dating. I see their social media posts. I see from the outside what they seem to look like, and I'm comparing us to them. And again, that can be a positive thing, that can be a negative thing. My expectations can also come from my values. These are the things that are important to me. These are the things I'm willing to sacrifice for. These are the things that are a priority for me, and I expect them to be important to you as well. I expect these things to be of value to you. I expect you to be willing to sacrifice for the same things that I'm willing to sacrifice for. Maybe it's just personality traits. I'm an extrovert or I'm an introvert. I like, quiet times. I like being fairly active. I like handling my finances a certain way. I like handling my finances a certain way. We have these personality traits. I'm a really organized person. I couldn't care less about details. I want a schedule. I fly by the seat of my pants. And either way, it's my personality. It's who I am. But I can end up having those same expectations. My personality can cause me to expect you to fit my personality. You need to see things the way that I do and have the same, at least similar personality traits that I have. And whatever the source is, whether it's past experience or personality or values or comparison, whatever the source is, with every relationship that I'm in, I walk into that connection with some kind of expectation, how this is going to go, what it's going to look like. I have a vision in mind. And again, that in and of itself is not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, some of those can be really good. I see what we can become. I see where this dating relationship can go. I see how good of friends we could be. I see what our family can end up having, the kind of dynamic that we can have in our family relationships. That can be a good thing to have those kinds of goals and visions. But it can also end up causing conflicts and problems when I get frustrated and angry because you are not meeting my expectations. I get anxious. I start to lash out. I start to point fingers and blame. The reason that we are not like the picture that I've conjured up in my head is because of you. You are not meeting my expectations. I need to understand that my expectations may be the source of the problem. It's not you, it's me. It's not you, it's my expectations. When does that happen? When is it that my preconceived ideas of what this relationship should look like, when does that become a problem? Well, you can see it evidenced in a bunch of different ways. I'll give you a handful of times that this is a problem. When my expectations are unrealistic, when I have a picture in my mind of what this friendship or this marriage or this family relationship is going to look like, and I've conjured that up in my mind, and it's something that you can't possibly measure up to, at least not immediately. You can't live up to those standards. You can't fulfill that picture. But I had this picture of perfection. I had this expectation that you are going to conform to the picture that I have in my mind. And again, it's not wrong to have goals. It's not wrong to say, this is who I think we can become. This is what I think this relationship can look like. That's not a bad thing in and of itself. But if I have these unrealistic standards and expect you to immediately be the kind of person that I have conjured up in my head that you should be, that becomes a problem. It's also a problem my expectations are uncommunicated. I might have already decided in my mind how you're going to handle a certain situation, what we're going to do with our finances, how we're going to celebrate some milestone, what we're going to do on this vacation. I mean, I have a picture in my mind of a whole number of things, but what if I don't ever tell you those things? I just expect you to see things the way that I do. I expect you to do the things that I've already pictured in my mind that you will do. And so then I end up saying things like, well, you should know what I wanted. If you don't know why I'm upset, well, then I can't help you. You must not really know me, which means you must not really care about me. And the problem is, you're not a mind reader. And I don't actually communicate with you what it is that I have in mind or what it is that I'm struggling with or what goals that I have. How are you supposed to know those things? You can't. And yet I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to get anxious. Like this is going to be a problem. There's going to be conflict because I'm not telling you what it is that I have in mind, what my picture of this relationship should look like. It could also be a problem. My expectations are inflexible. I've already decided. I've already chosen what our friendship needs. I've already decided what this marriage is going to look like. I already know for sure what we are going to do as a family in all these situations. And that's it. I have decided. I will put my foot down. And there's no compromise. There's no talking through things. There's no other way to approach this situation. And man, being in a relationship like that, that's exhausting. It's imprisoning. And it causes a lot of hurt feelings and frustration. It can also be a problem when my expectations really kind of the blanket statement or blanket category for all these things that we talked about, but my expectations are selfish. They're all about me. This is what I want to do. This is what I think is best. This is how I want us to spend our time. This is how I want us to spend our money. These are the decisions that I think we should make, and let's make this all about me. Now, I assume that most of us would not consider ourselves to be selfish people. Somebody walked up to you and said, hey, are you selfish? Our immediate reaction would be, no, I'm not selfish. We don't want to admit that. And most of us probably don't even see it about ourselves when we are selfish. And yet this can be one of the problems in our relationships, that I am so focused on me and what I want and what I have decided that we should do and who we should be in this connection with each other, that I become inflexible and I don't communicate and I set unrealistic goals because it's all about me. That just creates more anger, frustration, disappointment, resentment. When our expectations become unrealistic, when our expectations are uncommunicated, when our expectations are inflexible, when they are self-centered and self-focused and selfish, that becomes a problem. Now, here's my question. Look at these words up on the screen. Because remember this series. It's not you, it's me. So take an honest look at your marriage. Take an honest look at a certain friendship, or maybe your friendships in general. Take an honest look at your connection with your kids. Take an honest look at your connection with your parents. Take an honest look at your connection with your relationship, this person that you're dating right now. Do any of these words describe that relationship? Even remotely? Then that's a problem. That's something that we need to work on. Because I'm, in essence, allowing my expectations to cause a problem between the two of us. So what do? How can I improve that? How can I do things different? How can I be a better me when it comes to my expectations so that we can be a better we in this relationship? I want to give you a handful of ways to start. Okay? And I would encourage you, write these down, screenshot them, come back and watch this again later. Share this with somebody else. Maybe even watch this together with somebody that you're having some conflict in a relationship with. Kind of work through some of these things together. But if I take an honest look at any particular relationship that I wish was better than what it is now, and I recognize I've had some preconceived ideas in my mind, I had this vision in my mind of what this connection would look like, and it doesn't, then let's start with these steps. Number one, I need to try to empathize. I need to try to empathize with you. I need to make an effort to put myself in your shoes and to see things from your perspective and to understand if you have any expectations and why you have those things. I need to even ask, or at least try to find out, what were your past experiences like in certain relationships? What personality traits do you have? Where are your morals? Where are your values? How have those things contributed to how you're approaching this relationship? Where I'm not looking just from my perspective. I need to see things from your perspective. There's a story in the book of John, and we talked about this family last week when we were talking about control, but Jesus had these friends, this brother and two sisters, Lazarus and Martha and Mary. And we talked about Martha and Mary last week, specifically Martha having this desire for control. So if that sounds familiar to you, or if you missed out on that story, go back to last week's lesson and find out about that. But there's another story about this family in the book of John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those four books talk about Jesus when he was here on this earth. In the book of John, you get this description of Jesus teaching and preaching, and a message comes to him that his friend Lazarus, that he's very close to, is very sick, and Martha and Mary want Jesus to come, show up, and heal him. They know that he has the power to heal. They want him to heal. This is his really good friend, Lazarus. Jesus doesn't go immediately. He doesn't show up in time. Lazarus ends up dying. This is in John chapter 11. And so when Jesus does show up, and Martha is told, hey, Jesus is here, and she comes out to meet him as he's approaching the house. And we don't have every single detail of their conversation with each other, but we get just a small snippet of it. And you got to understand that Martha knew that Jesus could heal, and Martha knew that Jesus cared very much about her brother. And obviously, Martha cared about her brother, and she had sent word to Jesus ahead of time while Lazarus was still alive, while he still could be healed. Jesus, can you please come and heal him? And he didn't show up in time. Lazarus is dead. And she comes up to Jesus when you read in John chapter 11, says, Jesus, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. If you had gotten here in time, he would still be alive today. And you can sense the hurt that she's feeling because she's lost her brother and the frustration, maybe even anger that she's feeling towards Jesus. We sent you word. We sent a message. You didn't come in time. Where were you? And you can kind of give her the benefit of the doubt. I mean, she's grieving. She's frustrated. She's feeling hopeless in this moment. Jesus, where were you? If you had been here, he'd still be alive today. If you're Jesus, how would you react to that? I mean, Jesus could have said, excuse me, Son of God you're talking to here. You might want to change your tone. Jesus could have said, yeah, I did that on purpose because I'm going to raise him from the dead anyway. Spoiler alert, he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead later on in the chapter. Jesus could have said, you know what, this is not the kind of ingredient I wanted, and turned around and walked away. There's all sorts of reactions that Jesus could have had. But if you keep reading, what Jesus did was like, hey, let's go to the cemetery. Let's go to the grave. And they get there, and again, Jesus knew ahead of time. Jesus knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He knows he's going to bring him back to life. But which he does. He calls Lazarus by name. He comes out. It's this amazing miracle. Everybody's excited. But before he does that, what does he do? Shortest verse in the Bible, John chapter 11, verse 35. Jesus wept. Why? Well, different people have different reasons why they think Jesus wept. I mean, he's here at a grave. His friend has died. He's got other friends who care about Lazarus that are crying as well. It's just an emotional time. And maybe he's just overcome with emotion at the loss of his friend. There's some people that think Jesus is standing at this grave and recognizing that it won't be very long until he experiences death himself. And that's an emotional thing. And he begins to weep. Here's what I think. I think Jesus knew, Jesus expected to raise Lazarus from the dead. But what did he do first? He empathized. I'm going to sit in this grief and this sorrow with you. I'm going to allow myself to experience what it is that you're experiencing. You guys are hurting. You are heartbroken right now, and I'm going to do that with you. I'm going to be that with you. I'm going to sit in your shoes for a few minutes. I'm going to empathize. And folks, that's one of the biggest steps for us in overcoming our tendency to allow our expectations to dominate this relationship. Is to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, to see this connection, this relationship from the other person's perspective, to try to empathize with this other person. That's where I need to start if I'm going to start being a better me and not allowing my expectations to hurt our relationship. I need to put myself in your shoes. Number two, I need to try to keep myself from getting stuck in the comparison trap. There's nothing wrong with setting goals for this relationship. There's nothing wrong with trying to improve myself or trying to improve these different connections that I'm in. There's nothing inherently wrong with even looking at somebody else's marriage, somebody else's family, somebody else's friendship and going, man, that's what I want for myself. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But it can become a trap for me that I can get stuck in when I'm constantly looking at how good I think or how good I perceive everybody else has it instead of us. When I look at somebody else's marriage and think they're just so much better than mine. When I look at somebody else's family dynamic and think they're just so much more positive than mine. When I look at other friendships and think they're so much closer to their friends than I am to mine. And while that might even be accurate, I can get trapped by that, and I can get so caught up in focusing on all the good stuff that I see in everybody else. And I don't even focus on what flaws there are, how much work has gone into those things, what kind of things those people have had to work through. I don't pay attention to all that. I just see the picture. I see the picture on social media, or I see the picture that those people are painting while they're out in public with everybody else. And then I look at my own relationship. I look at my own connection, my friendship, my marriage, whatever it is, and I say, I want that. And I become so focused on that I don't even see the good stuff in my own relationship. I don't even see how, okay, there's some things we can work on, but we can work on those things. We can move forward. We can take steps forward. I get so caught up in what I don't have that I don't even pay attention to what I do, to what I do have. Going back again to the book of John, after Jesus was crucified, after he spent 3 days in the grave and rose again, he meets back together with his disciples. And he's having a conversation with his disciples named Peter. And Peter, that Brandon talked about in our communion thoughts today, Peter thought that he was going to stay true to Jesus no matter what. He's going to be connected to him. He was going to stick up for him. He was never going to leave his side. And Peter, in the time when Jesus needed somebody for support, needed somebody for help, needed somebody to at least stand up for him and be on his side, Peter turns his back on him. Peter walks away from him. And it was devastating for Peter after he realized his mistake. It was crushing for him. And now Jesus has risen again. And it's this amazing thing, and they're so excited about that. His disciples are so happy for that. And yet Jesus ends up kind of pulling Peter to the side at this one point and has a really hard conversation with him. It's in John chapter 21, the very last chapter of the book of John. And Peter basically is pressing, Jesus is basically pressing Peter and saying, Peter, do you really love me? I mean, I know you say you love me, but do you really love me? Man, it's hard. It's hard for Peter. Because there's probably part of him that thought at one time, yeah, I do. I really do care. And in that moment, he even confesses, I mean, I care a lot, Jesus. I don't know that I love you to the extent that you want me to. And it's this hard conversation. It's this difficult dynamic between Peter and Jesus. And so while they're walking along having this conversation, Peter looks over to the side and he sees another disciple of Jesus. We assume that is John. And Peter's having this, it's not conflict, but it's just a difficult situation that he's kind of processing through with Jesus in this moment. And he sees this other disciple, and he's not having the same difficulty with Jesus that Peter's having with Jesus. So what does he do? John chapter 21, verse 21. When Peter saw him, talking about the other disciple, he said, Lord, what about him? What about him? Why don't you get on to him? Let's focus on him for a minute. Where's all his failings? Where's all his mistakes? Let's not focus on me. And maybe Peter's even looking at this other guy who stuck closer to Jesus through the whole crucifixion process than anybody else and going, man, he did something that I didn't do. He's so much better than I am. They're so much closer than Jesus and I are. Peter is stuck in comparing himself to somebody else. And if you continue reading in John chapter 21, Jesus goes on, it's like, this isn't about him right now. This is about you and me. Now, I've got a connection with him, but that has nothing to do with us. And I share that story with you this morning, folks, because I want us to see that even Jesus says, let's work on us. Let's not waste time comparing ourselves and comparing our relationship, Peter, with somebody else. Let's not fall into that trap. And that's what I would encourage us to do as well. Whether it's our marriage, whether it's a dating relationship, whether it's our families, whether it's a friendship, be cautious, be careful about the trap of comparing ourselves to other people. What about them? It's not about them. This is about us. Let's work on us. Number 3, quickly, I need to communicate. I need to talk. I need to use my words. And by that, I don't mean communicating things like, well, he should know what I want. Well, she should understand how that makes me feel. They should have known what I meant. Well, they didn't. Because you didn't communicate. You didn't talk about it. We need to use our words sometimes. God has given us all sorts of talents and abilities and gifts, but nobody that I know, at least nowadays, nobody that I know has God given the ability to be a mind reader. That would be nice. I don't know, it'd be kind of dangerous too, but that would be an awesome skill to have. But none of us have that ability. I don't have it and you don't have it. So if there's something on my mind, especially when it comes to our relationship, that could be better, could be different, that I want to be different, that I want you to understand my perspective from this particular instance, then I need to talk about that. I need to use my words. I need to communicate that. I know I've told our Tuesday morning Bible class about this. I might have shared it with the whole church family before. First time I ever used a potato peeler. The old school potato peelers. They're a lot fancier nowadays, but just the old school, just this blade on the end of this stick. First time I used it, I was going to help Christy make supper, and I was like, I'll peel potatoes for you. She's like, okay. And so she starts working on something else, and I'm standing over the sink, and I am just working, trying to get the peeling off these potatoes, and it's not coming off. There's like potato dust coming off of them, but not potato peel. You know what I'm saying? And my arm's getting tired, and I just keep working and working and working, and nothing's happening. And finally, Christy's like, "You got any of those potato peels yet?" Because she needed them to go into whatever she was making. And I was like, "No, because this thing's defective. Something's wrong with it." And then she looked at what I was doing. She's like, "Turn it over." And see, there's a sharp side and a dull side. And I wasn't using the sharp side of the potato peeler. Man, those potatoes just peeled right off when I started using the right side. And you can look at that, and I'm sure many of you have peeled potatoes before. There are some of you, hey, this is if you learn nothing else today, you learn about a potato peeler, so you can know that for future reference. But some of you, I know, in your minds are going, how could you not know that? How did you not know? Just to turn, how did you not? Well, I didn't know. Nobody ever told me. In my growing up years, nobody told me, here's how you use a potato peeler. Nobody said it. So I didn't know. And as silly as that sounds, folks, that's what happens in our relationships a lot of times. We're trying, we're putting time and effort, and we're struggling. We're struggling through our marriage. We're struggling through this friendship. We're struggling through this dating relationship. We're struggling in our families with our siblings and our parents and our kids. We're just struggling, and we can't figure out why this person can't see things the way that I do, and why they're not doing things the way that I expect them to, and why they don't ever do the thing, and why they keep doing the thing that I don't want them to. And one of the main reasons is they don't know. And one of the main reasons that they don't know is nobody ever told them. I haven't said, this bothers me. I wish this was better. I think we can improve this relationship if we do this. I've never taken the time to do that. And if I don't communicate my expectations, and if I don't talk about what it is that's bothering me or what I think could be better, you are never going to know. So I've got to learn to communicate. To be able to say, okay, this is where we are now, but this is where I think we could get to. To be able to say, these are the things that I like about our relationship, but here's some things that could improve. Here's some things I wish were different. And as part of that communication, to listen as well. To be able to say, what do you think? What could I do to help this relationship? What do you need from me? And folks, if we get in a greater habit of that, then we don't have as much frustration to deal with, and anger and resentment to deal with, because we're talking about things ahead of time. This isn't about having a gripe session. This is about sitting down and being honest and genuine with each other, which is what Paul calls us all to in Ephesians chapter 4. He says in verse 25, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully. Speak genuinely. Speak sincerely to your neighbor, for you're all members of one body. Whoever I'm in this relationship with, I need to be able to use my words and share with them what's on my heart, what's on my mind. It may not be an easy conversation, but I need to be willing to have it so that we can have a more positive connection with each other. Lastly, real quick, the last thing, I need to model my expectations. What is it that I'm expecting from my spouse? What is it that I'm expecting from my child? What is it that I'm expecting from my parents? What is it that I'm expecting from this friend? Whatever that expectation is, I need to ask myself, is that what I'm demonstrating for them? Is that what I'm modeling for them? Is that what they experience from me? It's not fair, and it's definitely not healthy for me to expect something from you that I'm not willing to do for you. So Jesus says in Luke chapter 6 and verse 31, do to others as you would have them do to you. If I have a vision, if I have a picture in my mind of the ideal connection relationship with this particular person, what am I doing to model that for them? If I want us to spend our time doing this, if I want them to treat me a certain way or use certain words or not use certain words, if I want them to be honest and not gossip, if I want them to do certain actions to help me in some way, am I doing any of those things for them? Can they trust me? Am I gossiping about them? Do they know that I will sacrifice something that is important to me or some of my time to do whatever it is that they need done? Am I modeling for them what I hope to experience from them? I need to model that expectation if I want to experience those things from you. And that's how we get started, folks. It's not a quick fix. It doesn't happen overnight. But if I will try to empathize, and if I will keep myself from being focused on all the comparisons that I see around me, and if I learn to communicate well, and if I do for you what I want to experience from you, that's going to help me achieve those expectations. And maybe even be willing to let go of some of them that may not be as important. It's going to help me become a better me so that we can become a better we. In the book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament, Jeremiah was a prophet of God. And in chapter 18, God tells Jeremiah to go watch a guy throw a pot, make a pot, sit at a potter's wheel and make a pot. And he does. He goes and watches this guy. And as he's watching, whatever pot the guy was making, as it's spinning on the wheel and as he's shaping it with his hands, something happened. Something went wrong. And the pot didn't end up going like he wanted it to. And so the potter, Jeremiah says, started over. And he worked, and he kept working with his hands, and he kept shaping, he kept molding until he got that pot to be what he desired. And I wrap up this morning reminding you of that story, because I want you to see the pot wasn't turning out the way that the potter expected. So what did he do? Did he take that lump of clay and go, you know what, done, and walk away from it? It's not what Jeremiah said happened. Jeremiah said, he's like, well, this isn't what I expected. Let me keep working on it. Let me keep shaping. Let me keep digging in and trying so that this can become what I have in my mind that it can be. Folks, that can happen in our marriages. That can happen in our families. That can happen in our friendships. We don't just walk away when things aren't going exactly the way that we anticipated them. That we work on it. We dig in. We shift, we change, we mold until that relationship becomes healthy and becomes all that it could be. If for no other reason, because that's what our God does with us. And God has in his mind who he created us to be. And God has in his mind all that we could be as his children. And we, myself included, on a regular basis, mess that up. And God doesn't say, well, done. God takes us and says, let's keep working. Let me keep molding and shaping and digging in, because I know I can make this into something good. So we're going to stand up together. We're going to sing a song together. And I would invite you, as we stand to sing, I would invite you to take an honest look at yourself right now. Is there something that has become marred? Is there something that has become broken? Is there something that needs to be fixed in my own life so that my relationship with someone else or even my relationship with my God can be better? And I would invite you, if the answer to that question is yes, to come forward and confess that with this church family. And know and trust, we are not going to judge you. We're not going to criticize you. We're going to join with our Father in trying to help shape and mold and support in any way that we can so that he can make us better, so that he can make our marriages better, so that he can make our friendships and our families better. If we as a church family can help you do that this morning, if nothing else, if we can help you get reconnected to our God so that he can do that for you this morning, then please come forward and let us know how. While together we stand and sing.